So if you've got around 400 quid to spunk out on your next smartphone, well, good friggin' luck choosing one, because 2022 has been an absolute onslaught of marvellous mid-range mobiles from the likes of OnePlus, Oppo, Realme, Samsung, pretty much every bugger out there. And now you can add Motorola to that list with the UK release of the Moto Edge 30, a skinny wee blower sporting a capable 50 meg camera and respectable specs. Now, I've been using the Moto Edge 30 as my full-time smartphone for just over a week now. It even came with me on a little jaunt to Belgium, where somehow I managed not to lose it despite being violently done in by horrifically strong monk beer. So here's my full, final, frank review of the Motorola Moto Edge 30, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, for this past week, I've been really enjoying the slim and light finish here, even if I would have personally preferred a more compact design. But at least that flat display is bordered by teeny wee bezels, so this 6.5 incher isn't any larger than it needs to be. Unfortunately, as good as it looks, the Moto Edge 30's back end is very prone to greasy, grimy fingerprints. That matte finish just does not repel them in any way. At least certainly not here on this Meteor Grey model, which I do rather like, apart from the fact that it attracts all that grease and grime because it's got an almost metallic sheen to it. It's not made of metal, of course, but that PMMA back is tough stuff. There are no nicks or scratches to speak of, despite my less than gentle handling of the Moto Edge 30 this past week. And don't worry about the lack of a pre-installed screen protector either, because that display survives pretty much intact as well. There's a couple of tiny wee scratches on that surface. You've got to really hunt around to find them. And like most mid-range mobiles, the Moto Edge 30 isn't fully water resistant, but it is IP52 splash resistant at least, so no worries if it gets a wee bit moist. On the software side, you've got Android 12 here served up in a mostly stock form, but with Motorola's own special sauce slapped on top. The desktops, the apps tray, the rest of the UI pretty much untouched, and thankfully Motorola hasn't chucked a lot of crapware on here either. There's no Booking.com or LinkedIn or Facebook or any of that shenanigans. What you do have is the Moto app, which adds a whole bunch of bonus stuff, and as usual, most of it is rather cracking. From the convenience gestures to the customization shortcuts, it all basically serves a purpose, making life that little bit easier. And while I don't really use it myself, Motorola's Ready For feature is also on here, so you can beam your phone's content up to a compatible TV or a laptop or a computer in order to stream a bit of Netflix if you don't have any Wi-Fi signal, for instance. However, gotta be said, the software experience on the Moto Edge 30 can be a little bit janky, to put it politely. I've seen quite a startling number of bugs on this thing this last week or so. So for instance, Chrome is occasionally just completely unresponsive until you close it down and start it back up again. A similar thing from Docs as well. Sometimes that completely freezes up and crashes on me. Motorola's own video call effects tool also had a bit of a paddy when I first loaded up Skype. It started conjuring all these pop-ups which then refused to go away even when I shut down Skype. So I immediately knocked that right the f*** off. So yeah, never got quite to the point where I wanted to hurl this frickin' thing against a brick wall, and I'm sure that a couple of updates in the future, all these issues will be sorted, but you know, just a fair heads up warning. Motorola is promising a couple of years of OS and security updates with the Moto Edge 30. Not quite as many as some rivals like OnePlus and Nokia, but it's definitely something. And again, like most mid-range mobiles, you've got a choice for 128 or 256 gigs of built-in storage space. I've still got quite a bit of that, 128 gigs left. No micro SD memory card support on this thing though, so you cannot expand that. Now, Motorola's 6.5 inch AMOLED screen here is absolutely lovely stuff. It is very much pleasing to the peepers when you're browsing photos or relaxing with some shows on the go. Like most mid-range rivals, it is a Full HD Plus panel with HDR10 Plus support, and HDR content looks proper lush with crisp contrast and natural looking hues. Unfortunately, more complaints because the auto brightness is completely shonky, so quite often, whether I was indoors or outdoors, the screen would just be too dim to really comfortably see what was going on, so I found I was constantly having to manually boost it up again. Although at least the good news is that on the top brightness, I could still see what was going on, even on a very sunny day when I was rocking the shades. But in better news, that refresh rate does top off at 144Hz, so just flicking around the stock Android UI is slicker than a slab of oily lard. And there's not really much to complain about with Motorola's stereo speaker setup. The Moto Edge 30 pumps out respectable audio on top volume, not too tinny, although it is slightly imbalanced. And I had bugger all complaints when it came to the wireless connectivity as well. That Bluetooth 5.2 support works a charm whether I was streaming to a speaker here in the studio or to a pair of headphones out in a crowded London city centre. You got full support for LDAC, good bit of aptX, all of that good stuff as well. And it's probably just as well that the Bluetooth is good because there is bugger all headphone jack action. Now, in charge of the show is Qualcomm's capable Snapdragon 778G Plus, as found in loads of other mid-range rivals and also the upcoming Nothing phone. And it's backed here in my review model by 8 gigs of RAM. And that's more than enough grunt to keep everything running smoothly as it should, especially as this is a lighter software experience compared with a lot of other mid-ranges. This all said, the arse end of the Moto Edge 30 does heat up rather quickly when you're gaming, especially if you're playing something more demanding like a Genshin Impact. You'll definitely want to keep this little beauty on lower graphics settings to enjoy relatively smooth gameplay. You'll still see the occasional little stumble, of course. While games like Call of Duty play perfectly, even if you chuck those detail levels up to the maximum settings. And another bonus added by the Moto app is the Gaming Tool set, which can be conjured onto the screen at any time. And this isn't anywhere near as comprehensive as rival phones running ColorOS or Xiaomi's MIUI, for instance, but it stocks all the important stuff like notifications blocking. You got Wi-Fi 6E support here on the Moto Edge 30. I found that worked absolutely fine. Unfortunately, the mobile connectivity was a bit patchy. I wasn't quite getting the strength of mobile connection that I'm used to, and especially in Belgium as well, I found I quite often got a lot of dropouts. So even though it does support 5G, courtesy of that Snapdragon chipset, I didn't really see a 5G network connection very often at all. As for the battery life, well, you've got a 4020 mAh battery crammed into this thing, and it usually lasts a day as long as you don't go nuts. I did run dry just before bedtime on a couple of occasions with the Moto Edge 30, but that was generally when there was like an hour of Skyping involved and lots of other heavy use throughout the day as well. Generally, with around sort of 6 hours of screen on time, if you're just going to be messaging, web browsing, occasionally streaming some audio, some video, then you're going to be all right. If you are a more demanding user, you might want to look elsewhere. The good news is that the Moto Edge 30 can be powered up relatively fast with its 33 watt turbo power wired charging support. Again, not quite as strong as some mid-ranges from the likes of Xiaomi, but it'll do the job. Now, to capture your memories, Motorola has chucked on a 50 meg primary camera with built-in optical image stabilization, and it's as good, if not better, than quite a lot of other mid-ranges I've tested recently. It certainly does the job for snapping pictures of the horrifically strong beer you're about to pour down your throat so you can actually recall it the very next day. Although, as you can see, the Moto Edge 30 can't be trusted to do all the focus and heavy lifting when you've had a skinful. Even if you're capturing a high contrast scene such as a monument or a building framed by a bright blue sky, the Moto does not fill its draws and leave you with a hazy or saturated shot. Instead, it finds the right balance more often than not and doesn't lose any of that gorgeous sky colour. At the same time, each pic is packed with detail, looking good even when chucked on a proper big screen. Portrait snaps also come out well, helped by the basic depth sensor, which keeps your target sharp and adds that lovely bokeh style effect in the background. When lighting is more ambient, you will notice that your photos are a lot softer with some obvious grain at times. But all the same, the Moto Edge 30 doesn't capitulate. Just make sure your subject doesn't move at all and the results are generally fine. Now, while most rivals make do with a simple 8 or 12 meg ultra-wide sensor, Motorola really isn't f***ing about here, slapping yet another 50 meg camera onto the back end, this one with a 118 degree field of view. Unfortunately, the colour accuracy is still off in my test snaps, although not to some horrifically alarming degree. Just don't expect a realistic pic and you should be happy enough with the results, 4 times out of 5 at least. The video clips I shot on the Moto Edge 30 generally came out well with 4K HDR smarts. Just be careful with the compatibility if you switch that option on. Image stabilization is pretty good even at Ultra HD, while scenes are packed with detail and poppy colours. And audio is also clearly picked up from all directions even at a distance. Meanwhile, Motorola's 32 meg selfie snapper isn't quite as capable as the main camera, with some saturation creeping in whenever you shoot in stronger light. However, even in quite low light, you will get far too much detail backed into those facial snaps for my liking. Every single pore is picked up, as is every sag, bag and bit of food you've got stuck between your teeth. And that right there is my full final review of the super skinny Motorola Moto Edge 30. One of the better options right now if you're looking for a mid-range stock Android kind of vibe, but of course it is plagued with some issues, most of them software based, which hopefully will be ironed out in updates very soon indeed. So yeah, the camera tech impressed me very much indeed. The performance is absolutely fine. The battery life's okay, though more demanding users might not be fully satisfied. So it's certainly one I'm keen to return to in another couple of months when hopefully all those software issues are resolved, and hopefully it should be a very enjoyable all-round experience. Anywho, that's what I reckon of the Moto Edge 30. It'd be great to hear what you guys reckon. Are you tempted, or indeed have you been using the Moto Edge 30 as your own full-time smartphone as well? Please do hit me up down below. Poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a bloody good rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.